Oh, hello.
Hi, Mario.
Ah,
Oh, Jorge.
I said one time before the Yantiv comes, I'm going to join them. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Ah, that's how much I respect you, Ernie. You see?
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you.
Yeah, 79, Jorge.
I see. Ah,
Okay, we're on Ayin. We've been dealing with the Korban Toda, which is a shlomim, which is brought along with 40 loaves of challah, 10 of which are made of matzah, 30 of them are matzah, 10 of them are chametz.
what
And
what was the daf?
we're on 79, Amud Aleph.
Okay, good. So I'm in the right
And,
place. Good.
yeah. Shachta v'nimtzas balasmum. So if you shech the Korban Toda, and after Shechita you find that it was a balmum, so the question is, do the loaves become hegdish? Because it's the act of Shechita of a normal korban that sanctifies the loaves. Now, if the korban, if it was not valid, so the Mishnah said that the loaves have a certain disqualification. So the disqualification of being a balmum, Rabbi Eliezer said it still becomes kadosh. Rabbi Yeshua said lo kadosh. Divrei Meir. That's our Rabbi Meir, and that sort of fits our Mishnah. On Rav Yehuda lo nechlik Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua shachtav nimsas treifa shaloi kadosh. There is no machlokes that if they do a post-mortem after shechita and they find, for example, a hole in the lung or a hole in the intestine, there are 18 different invalidations that make an animal a treifa. So if the animal was a treifa, it was a treifa before they shechted it. And the principle that the Baraisa mentioned was kol shepisulo kodem shechita lo kodesh alechem. If the invalidation occurred prior to the shechita, if it was invalid lechatchila, then it doesn't sanctify the breads. So there, if it's a treifa, nobody argues that it's kadosh. Then, if you had it in mind al chutz lizmano, now, if when you shech the animal, you have in mind to eat of the animal beyond its time. Now we know that creates a psul of pigul, but it's not a physical damage prior to the shechita. It occurred through the methodology of how you shechted it or how you do the zrika. So there, the breads would be kadosh, and the balmum shaloi kadosh. And if it was a balmum, they also don't agree. They don't argue that the breads do not become hektish because that was an invalidation that existed before the shechita. Alman nechlaku, al chutzlim komo. If you have in mind when you shech the animal to, for example, eat it in Tel Aviv, so the normal place of eating it is either in the Azara or at worst, in the walls of Yerushalayim. So that's a psul of chutzlim komo. Now, however, that's possible in Bokares, but Rabbi Eliezer Amir Kadosh, Rabbi Eliezer says it's still sanctified. We'll see what his reasonings are. Rabbi Yeshua Amir Lo Kadosh. Rabbi Eliezer, Hoil v'chutz lizmano posel. He says chutz lizmano invalidates. V'chutz l'mkomo posel, and chutz l'mkomo also invalidates. Ma chutz lizmano kadosh. If you shecht it with it beyond its time, machshava, the breads are still okay. Av chutz l'mkomo kadosh. So he connects the two improper machshavas. Amir Yeshua, no, hoil v'chutz l'mkomo posel, balmum posel. He compares it to a balmum. They're both posel. Ma balmum loy kodesh, av chutzim koma lo kodesh. So that's the debate between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, ani demisil lechutzes mano. I compared the chutzim koma lechutzes mano. The atad demisil lebalmum. You compared it to a balmum, which is a blemish. Here, let me domet. What is more comparable? Im dom lechutzes mano. If it's more comparable to, if chutzim komo is more comparable to chutzim mano, we should treat it halachically nidonim chutzim mano, which we said the breads were kosher. Im doim balmum, if it's more comparable to balmum, we should treat it nidonim balmum, which would make the breads not kosher. And Rabbi Eliezer is going to try to prove his point. Here's Rabbi Eliezer lodun. Donim psul machshava mipsul machshava. What does chutz mano and chutzim komo have in mind? Well, they're both invalidations of intent. There's nothing wrong with the animal itself. So, says Rabbi Eliezer, it makes more sense to compare chutz mano to chutzim komo and chutz mano, because they're both invalidations of intent. And it doesn't make sense to compare chutzim komo psul to a balmum, where it's actually a physical validation. So Hischil Rabbi Yeshua Lodun. Rabbi Yeshua responds, Donin psul she'en b'koris mipshul she'en b'koris. By shechting a balmum, it does not deliver kores. It's a lav, not a lav with kores. And chutzim komo is also a lav that doesn't have kores. Why yocheh chutzim manu psul sheyesh b'kores? Don't involve chutzim manu, because there, if you eat a kazayas of the animal that was made pigul through chutzim manu machshava, you get kores for that. So says Rabbi Yeshua, makes more sense to compare chutzim komo to balmum, and ma balmum did not sanctify the lechem. So too, the chutzim komo will not sanctify the lechem. Then he adds a second reason to compare. V'od nidono mishalo lishmo shepsul machshava vein b'koris. If you have a korban shlamim, but when you shechted, you had in mind that it should be an ola. So that's also, we said, it does not sanctify the breads. It's also a machshava that doesn't have kores. Another reason to compare chutzim komo to something that doesn't sanctify the breads. Shosek Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer didn't have a response. But Meir Maishna Shachtov Nimsa Streifa Davi Psul Kodem Shchita, Maishna Shachtov Nimsa Balsmum Delavi Psul Kodem Shchita. How come we said that a balmum, there's an aspect that one of the Mandiom and Rabbi Eliezer held that the lechem is okay. But a balmum, its invalidation exists prior to shchita, similar to a treifa. So why should it be different than the psul of a treifa, which does not sanctify the breads? So the Gemara answers for Reb Meir, we're not talking about a regular balmum. Bedukin sheba'ayin alibed Rabbi Kiva. Bedukin sheba'ayin is a cataract. And there's a machlokes whether or not, if you shecht, even though lechatchila you should not shecht such an animal, if you did it and you put it up on the mizbech, you don't take them down. Since there's an aspect that im ol lo yerdu, they have a certain validation, and therefore that's why Rabbi Eliezer holds the breads become sanctified when you shecht a korban shlamim that has a dukin shebayim. How come Rabbi Yeshua doesn't agree with that? Kiyam Rabbi Kiva im ol lo yerdu, because when does Rabbi Kiva hold that a mum of dukin shebayim, a cataract, doesn't be taken down from the mizbech b'psula de gufe? Okay, it has its own psula guf, but to extend to something beyond its guf, to sanctify the lechem, Aval kedusha lechem lo, it doesn't have the power to do that. Okay. Itmar. Chatas sheshachta chutz lizmana. So he shechted the shlamim with a chutz lizmano. I'm going to eat it tomorrow or in 2 days. And shlamim can only be eaten for 1 day. A shlamim toda can only be eaten for 1 day. So that's chutz lizmano. We know that's pasul v'yesh bo kores. Even so, a chatas that got shechted chutz lizmano him also lo sered. That lechatchila you shouldn't have put it up on the mizbeach. But if you put it up on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. That's if it's chutz lizmano. Chutz limkomo, if you had in mind to eat it in Tel Aviv, where it's interesting, that doesn't have kores, we treat it more stringently. Rava Omar Tered. Rava says, if you had put it up on the mizbeach, you got to take it down. Rabba Omar Loy Sered. Rabba Karab Yoshia. Rabba will hold like Rabbi Yoshua. Excuse me, Rava will hold like Rabbi Yoshua. So just like by Rabbi Yeshua holds, if you find an animal be a balmum, it doesn't miskadesh the lechem, it also has to be taken down. But Rabbah holds like Rabbi Yezer, since it does sanctify the lechem, you do not have to take it down. However, Hadar be Rabbah lagabi de Rabbah. Rabbah eventually changed his mind to Rabbah. Mida Hadar be Rabbi Yezer lagabi de Yeshua. In the end of the debate we had between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yezer, Shosak Rabbi Rabbi Yezer sort of conceded to Rabbi Yeshua. So too, in the Amoraic dispute between Rabbah and Rava, he eventually also agreed to Rabbi Yeshua. Ikedi Amri, though, other people learn, Avagav Dahader be Rabbi Yezer Lagabi Rabbi Yeshua, even though in the Machlokas regarding the Lechem, Rabbi Yezer changed his mind and conceded to Rabbi Yeshua, Rabba Lagabi de Rabbi Lahader be. Rabba, regarding a chatas, which is inadvertently put up on the Mizbech, he said you don't take it down. He didn't go back on that. There, he treated it like a shalol lishmo. That's regarding the offering, regarding whether it's miskadish the lechem or not. And there, Rabbi Eliezer had agreed to Rabbi Yeshua regarding that issue. But regarding echatas, whose kedusha, if it's put up on the mizbech, it doesn't take it down. There also, Rabbi Yeshua would agree that a psul of shalol lishmo does not cause you to take a korban down from the mizbeach. So therefore, he would stay with his opinion that if even though lechatchila you shouldn't have put it up on the mizbeach, if you put it up on the mizbech, you don't take it down. Okay. The Mishnah said shachta shalol lishmo, that if that was the lachmei toda, we also talked about the aisle of the miluim, and we talked about the shtel lechem also, that in any of those cases, if you shechted it shalol lishma, it would not sanctify the breads that went along with it. Amrav Papa, shavak tani didon el nazir deshchiach. Why did the Tana did not mention the ale nazir, right? We had another type of korban that came along with breads. And why did it all of a sudden bring this aisle that was brought in the Miluim, which was only brought once in the history of Klal Yisrael, which was in the Midbar? The Noket Ela Miluim, right? Betana Didan, Ikr Milsa Nokat. Because our Mishnah says, Rav Papa brings the first time that it was mentioned. It's mentioned before the El Nazir, the korban of the aisle. So that's why he mentions it according to the chronology of how it's rolled out in the Torah. Mishnah. Hanesachim shekitchu bekli. So we know that many korbanos, the Ola, the Shlomim, were brought along with wine, libations, that had to be poured on the Mizbeach, along with the Mizbeach, along with the korban. Now, if the wine libations had already been sanctified in a kli, and then you shechted the animal. And afterwards, it was found that the animal was possible, right? It was either shalol lishma or chutz lizman or chutz l'mkoma, whatever the psuls was. But when you shechted it, the wine was already in a kli. Im yesh zevach acher, if in the Beis Hamikdash at that time there's another korban that was okay, so yakrivu imo. So it's interesting. Yain is a little different than lechem. Lechem is attached to that specific korban. And therefore, if some problem arises with that specific korban, you can't resurrect the lechem. The lechem is dead. It's done. Doesn't get hugdash. But yayin, if the korban that it was supposed to go with got invalidated, you look around and you see if there's another korban that's okay, you can bring it with that korban. So it's not as specifically tied to a specific behema, right? Now, if there wasn't, there are no other korbanos that were fit. So what you do is you leave it overnight till the morning. We know all korbanos are invalidated through lina, and then you burn it. That's what this Mishnah teaches us. Amar Zeiri. That the yayin, similar to the lechem, becomes hukdash when you shech the animal. My time, Amar zevach unsochim. So the word zevach refers to shchita. So the shchita unesochim. So the shchita is the one that actually sanctifies the yayin. However, the Gemara immediately brings our Mishnah, Tanan. Anesachim shekitshu bekli. V'nimtza zevach pasul. First you sanctified the yain in a kli. Then you shechted the animal. You found that the animal was pasul. We said, you could be makriv with it. Bimlah be pasul belina. Now, my love, the ifsil b'shchita. Now, when it says nimtza zevach pasul, says the Gemara, what are we talking about? We're talking about that the shchita was not good. There was a machshava, there was an improper machshava, whatever. So my love, the ifsil b'shchita. And the kasha is, you see that it's not miskadish b'kli. It's not miskadish b'the shchita, because the shchita was a puzzle to kashchita. And you see, it's not that it was miskadish b'shchita, it's miskadish b'kli. So the Gemara says, lo, there's no proof that when it says v'nimsa zevach pasul, that there was a problem with the shchita. The problem was with the zrika. For example, when you did the zrika, you had in mind that you're going to eat from the korban tomorrow. Okay, but it's not a shchita problem; it's a zrika problem. And the Hanami, the yayin was niskadesh with the shchita, the animal, exactly like Zeiri said. Keman kerebi, and that fits the shita of Rebbe. The Omar, shnei dvorim amatirim malan zebelo zeb. There are korbanos where you have, for example, zrikas hadam is the ultimate matir. Matir is a permitter, okay? To allow you to permit to eat the meat. If you don't do zrikas hadam, you're not permitted to eat the meat. But in essence, korbanos have two matirim. You got to do shchita, because you can't get the blood without shchita. So shchita and zrika are matirim. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds that as long as you did, if the korban had two matirim, but you did one of them correctly, that sanctifies the korban. And therefore, here we're talking about a case where the zrika was bad, but the shchita was good. And that's enough to be miskadish the yayin, even though eventually it became possible through an improper zrika. So the Gemara is trying to say that this is only the sheet of Rebbe, not the Chachamim. So the Gemara says no. Afilatem Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon, who's the bar plukta of Rebbe, who holds that you need both matirim done properly to be miskadish something. So kigon shekibel damen bakos v'nishbach. what happened here? They did the shechita, they collected the blood in a cup, and it got spilled. So you couldn't do the zrika. But the blood before you spilled it was okay for zrika. So as long as the dam was royal zrika, that was enough. And Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, several kavase davua. This is the famous Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Both of them were in a cave for 2 years or so, living on a carob tree. That's Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, several kavase davua. This is the sheet of his father, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Omar, kol ha'omed lizra kazaruk domi. Blood that is ready to be thrown is as if as it was thrown. So once you did the shechita and you collected it in a kos, okay, it's ready to go. Okay, later on, 5 minutes later on, it spills. But that's not our problem. According to Reb Shimon, once it's ready to be thrown, it's as if it was thrown. If it was thrown, then the yayin becomes, even according to the shita, that you need both materiim to work. So you need a proper shechita, you need a proper zrika. So it does work. Because even though later on you spilled the blood and you don't have any blood to do the zrika is what at one point was roy to be nizrak. And therefore that's why the yayin is miskadesh. Okay, that's acceptable. Amar, we said that you shechted the animal and you have wine libation that's supposed to go with it. And then you find out that the animal was treifa or balmum. So we said if you have another animal fit to go, you could do the wine libations with the other animal. If you designated this amount of oil or this specific oil, you were mafresh it for this mincha, if all of a sudden this mincha becomes invalid, you can't use the shemen for another mincha. So how come it's different for the yayin? Will we say that if the yayin that was attached to this behema, the behema becomes puzzle, you could find a different behema? Why? Rav Yanai, Leiv based in Masnalim. We know that there was a place in the base of Midrash called the Lishkat Gozis, and the Sanhedrin sat there. And based in made a t'nai in the yayin that im hutzrachu vim lav yehi. So there was a special t'nai that based in made that accompanies these wine libations that makes it different than the mincha. So yachi shemen nami. Well, Leiv Bezdin did the same thing for the oil. So how come you say you can't use the oil for a different mincha? Oh, shemen gufa de mincha. There's something fundamentally different about oil with a mincha and yayin with a korban, and I'll explain what. The shemen is a physical part of the mincha itself, right? The mincha is a combination of flour and oil, so it's part of the korban itself. If the flour now is invalid, you can't use the shemen. Yayin is not part of the physical structure of the korban. The korban is the animal. You shech the animal, you throw the blood. But it's not part of the physical korban. So therefore, if the animal becomes invalid for whatever reason, the yayin could be transferred to a different korban. So that's the main point. So why didn't the Leiv Bezdin have a t'nai to say that if the korban that was connected to the yayin became puzzle, it loses its hegdish. It becomes chulin. So technically, the Gemara says it could have done that, but it's a problem because people will say, "Oh, once you put something in a klisharis, you could take it out and use it for chul." Normally, you can't do that. They won't know that in the case of this yayin, it was based in that made a special t'nai that exempted it. But people will think, because normally the din is, once something is miskadish b'kli, that's it. You can't go back to chulin. So if you're going to say like that, Hashanami, Gzer Shema Yomru, Nesachim Shefrish L'Shum Zerach Zak, Shem L'Shum Zerach Acher. So if you, though, allow the wine to be used for another korban, people will also say inappropriately that wine that was designated for this korban can lechatchila be used for another korban. And the case, that's not true. It's only because of Leiv Bezdin. So, Hatani Matisyahu ben Yehuda, Kagon Shaya Zevach Zavuch Bo'is Shah. So, there was another korban specifically being shechted at that same time as the other korban. So people will know that it was shechted, that the yayin was connected to that korban for sure, because it was shechted at the same time. So what did we say? If it had not been shechted at the same time, we would invalidate it, nifsal belina, and burn it. But then adatani seifa, why wait for the seifa where we said that if we can't find another animal in lav, if there is no other animal, you pass the belina? No. If you're correct that it has to do with that there's no that the korban was shechted exactly at the same time, it should have liflog v'lisnei b'didah. They should have argued exactly at that moment and said like this: Bamed v'mamorim shai says zevach zavoch b'isashah. When do we say that it works? There was an animal shechted at the same time, so people won't make the mistake that it was connected to, that you could always do it to another animal. But if there wasn't, the animal wasn't shechted exactly at the same time, we can't say nifsal belina. So Chanami Kama, the Gemara says, it accepts the point. Then it becomes as if it had become invalidated through Lina, and it becomes possible. Frank the Gemara, Umi Islin Rab Shimon ben Elazar Leiv Bezdin Masnalan. We answered some of our questions by saying that Bezdin made a t'nai regarding the status of the. Does Rab Shimon hold that this whole concept exists? Tmidin shelo yutzruchu letzibur. Every day, the tzibur had to bring a korban tamid, and they separated multiple animals because maybe one would become puzzle, so they had some in reserve. So they shechted a korban tamid, and it was okay. And then they have this extra animal that's not needed. Now, what do you do with it? L'divrei Rab Shimon ein niftin tmimin. Normally, you can't redeem an animal if it's unblemished, right? We have this whole concept of, well, we send the animal out to graze until it gets a mum for the purpose of, at that point, you can redeem it, and it can go out l'chulin. So Rab Shimon said, you cannot be pointed them as long as they're still tomim. However, divrei chachamim niftin tmimim. Now, why? Because according to chachamim, leiv bezdin is masne that if it's not needed eventually for the tzibur, it can go out l'chulin. Well, you see, Reb Shimon is arguing with the chachamim here, because what is he arguing about? He does not accept this concept that Bezdin makes a t'nai initially. Shani hasum the isli takona b'riyah. So Reb Shimon normally says that Bezdin can make a t'nai. In this case, he says Bezdin doesn't need to make the t'nai because you have another alternative. You send the animal out to graze. Eventually, it's going to be hit by it's going to bite into a barbed wire fence and have a balmum in its lip. That's usually what happened. And it becomes a balmum, and then you can redeem it. Period. Where are you guys going?
But then you're gonna take Kobe and
With what car?
You're gonna go with Jake, okay. Jake is that you have a seat.
Okay.
So you're gonna take Kobe, I'm gonna tell you.
Mishnah. Vlad toida usmurasa. So a animal could be in the keva. Doesn't need to be a zop. It could be in the keva. We said a toda is a shlamim. So therefore, it could be that it's a pregnant cow. So if you designated an animal as a toda, and then it gave birth, so that's called a vlad toda. Or you made a tmura. We're going to have a whole masechta tmura. Tmura is where you have two animals. One animal is a shlami. The other animal is a regular animal. And you point to the regular animal and you say, I want that animal to be a tmura, like a replacement. And a tmura is a specific word. It doesn't, like a substitute or a replacement for this animal. So the din is that the sanctification moves over to the other animal. But how you deal with that animal is different than the regular index animal. Certain a tmura shlamim could be offered as a shlamim. But for example, a tmuras chatas has to be put to death. So this Mishnah says that the vlad of a toda or a tmura of a toda or hifrish toida v'avda, you were mafresh a korban toda and then you lost it. V'hifrish acheres tachteha, and then you designated another animal. And then you found the original one. Eina te'una lechem. Either the vlad or the tmura or the animal that you replaced the original animal with, you don't bring lechem with them when you sacrifice them. You can sacrifice them without the lechem. Shnemar, v'hikriv al zevach hatoda. Hatoda te'una lechem, v'lo vloda, v'lo chilufa, v'lo tmurasa te'unin lechem. Only an index pure toda gets the lechem, not its vlad, not if you had to separate another one, and not its tmura. Ton Rabba, my oimer, what is it? My oimer toida yakriv. It says, mal toida yakriv, if you're going to offer a toda korban minayin lemafresh toidoso ve'avda. How do I know that if you were mafresh a toda and you lost it? V'ifresh acheres tachton, you were mafresh a new one. And v'nimtzis arishona, the original one was found. Varei shtein omdos. You have both in front of you. Minayin she'ezaman she'yirtze yakriv v'lach ma'imo. You can choose, you have the two animals, right? You initially designated animal A, and then you lost it. And so if you found animal B, and all of a sudden you found animal A again. So you have two, A and B. This Gemara says, I can choose whichever one I want with its lechem. So this brisa, obviously, is not like our Mishnah, because our Mishnah clearly said that its replacement would not get lechem. So the Gemara is obviously quoting this brisa to set up a challenge to our Mishnah, right? Tabagormar hatoida yakriv. Oh, yachol shetei shniya tuna lechem. And I might have thought that the second animal, that the animal B, would also require lechem. Tamadona yakrivenu echad v'lo shnayim. Only one of the korbanos, if you do it, gets lechem. Achar shariba kosavu miyeh. So the Torah, in one hand, included, right? Because it said you could use either animal. And then in the next statement, it minimized and said, no, you could only bring lechem for one of them. Minayin l'rabbis v'lodos v'chalifos u'tmuras la'krova. So the Ribui says that the child of an animal, if it was pregnant, or its replacement, or its tmura, you're allowed to be makrivit Talmud Lomar im al toida. But you might think yachol yehu tunas lechem, I would still require lechem for all of them. Talmud Lomar, no. The hikriv al zevach hatoida, the initial toida to una lechem. V'lo v'loda, v'lo chilufa, v'lo tmurosa tu'unin lechem. So this brisa is actually exactly like our Mishnah. Okay. Shalach Rav Chanina mishmeid Rav Yochanan. Lo yishanu el alachar kapara. When do we say that these other types of toda, the vlad, the tmura, and the replacement, don't require lechem, is if you already had offered the first one. Aval lifnei kapara, but if the original one had not been offered, then yes, tu'unin lechem. That's what Rav Chanina says. However, Havi bar Rav Amram was analyzing the sugya, and he said, "Ayah, which case is this referring to in the name of Rav Yochanan? Are you talking about a replacement of an obligatory toda? For example, he was required to bring the toda, like he came back from a trip, he was healed from his sickness, he was redeemed from prison. That's not a donative toda, that's an obligatory toda. You must give that toda. This statement of that you offer it before kapara, after kapara, that's already been learned. Why are you repeating it? So the Gemara will pick up tomorrow. It's referring to a non-obligatory toda. Okay. So let me see. Tonight is Tuesday night in Los Angeles. So tomorrow morning, Wednesday, we're going to learn at 8 a.m. So for
Isn't
me,
that
it's
late for you?
no, I have time. It's 6:30. I have time to learn because otherwise it's going to be too early. 7:30, you guys are in davening, or you want to do it 7:45?
No, it's too
So let's do it 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Let's
It's very
do it 8 o'clock. Okay. 8 o'clock is good, fine for me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good bedikas chametz.
Unless other people want to do it 7:45. I mean, I don't want to stop anybody.
No, 8 o'clock is
8
fine.
o'clock.
There's time.
8
8
o'clock.
o'clock is
Okay, thanks. Okay, bye.
Good night.